Yo, hello, if you guys have not heard, the Pokemon World Championships have announced their championship point bar. If you're new to the competitive Pokemon scene, championship points are basically the qualification that you get through going through every event. You can get like a certain amount of points that eventually rise up to give you qualification to the day one of the Pokemon World Championships. And day one is essentially like the LCQ of the Pokemon World Championships, though it's still like a formal invitation, and you play to get to day two, which you can see here the top 8 players, top 16, top 8, and top 4 from Oceania. But ultimately, the new championship point bar, you get 130 for juniors and seniors in the US and 300 for masters, 100, 130, 250 for Europe, 100, 130, 200 for Latin America, 100, 130, 200 for Oceania, and 100, 130, 200 for the Middle East and South Africa. Most notably here, I think one of the biggest updates I'll say is Latin America being detached from the US and Canada rating zone, essentially. Like, Latin America is always a different rating zone, but they always had, like, the same kind of championship point bar as the US, and that was always, like, really unfair, as Latin America doesn't really have the same, like, caliber or same number of events that the US does, and also has really does not had many regional championships as of late. So the US and Canada finally being like separate from Latin America is finally like a good change for the Latin American region. We may see a lot more players from the Latin American region coming to the Pokemon World Championships. Though of course it is notable that the event being in Japan, that's still going to be very hard for a lot of the more Western players, but at least the qualifications to actually get to the chance to go to Worlds will be easier. Though ultimately getting the invites and going yourself is still going to be like fairly hard. Japan's a lot more expensive to travel to for a lot of the Western world, so it's going to be a little difficult for a lot of US and Latin America players to actually get there. But at minimum, the qualification is substantially easier than before. The US and Canada qualification before being 400 championship points, which is notably the same as 2 regional championships. And there's some other information I want to cover. Right now, we still don't have information on like the premier challenges and mid-season challenges, what championship points they bring, and those will be like a very quintessential, ultimately like defining part of how people can actually pursue getting a Worlds invite. So that announcement is really gonna show how like critical the 300 point adjustment actually is, or if it's like a nerf, or if it's like a little too slow. We'll understand that all when locals ultimately come back as a week. As you can see here, premier challenges are essentially like your local tournaments on like the local level that any like tournament organizer in your area can host. And you also have the World Championship point graph here. You can see for like regionals being 200. So realistically, it's a potential way to qualify for Worlds, because mid-season showdowns before were like 50 points, right, for a win. So you could win like 2 mid-season showdowns and then win a regional and then you get a qualification. Or like, let's say you get top 128 at an international championship, that's 100. And then you get like top 8 at a regional. And then you just win 2 mid-season showdowns, which depending on the area is like always going to vary how easy that is or how hard. Or you could get like multiple results of that, and that would ultimately be a world championship bar if the mid-season showdown remains the same, that ultimately being something that we don't fully know yet. And here's like the list of the regionals, but yeah. And if you want to find locals for your area, ultimately I do not think it's really updated for the video game yet, as video game events do not come back until we actually get to January. But I think one of the easiest ways to find if you have a VGC event is actually going to like a TCG league, even if you don't play the trading card game. Because like one of the main things of why TCG leagues are important is a lot of those judges at the TCG league are also able to host VGC events, but choose not to simply because they do not know how many people would actually go to that VGC event. So if you're able to actually show up to like a TCG league, like I'm using my area for example because I'm from like Indianapolis, right? Or you show up to one of these like many TCG leagues and tell them, hey, I would be willing to play in like VGC, right? And you can get potentially one of those to actually host VGC. As you can see, like right now there's no events found, as like that probably won't remain the same for VGC, but in general, TCG, this has like a lot more leagues, and that's a big disparity for how these games are played. So I do recommend, if you have the chance and you know of like TCG events in your area, right, like TCG leagues, just showing up to one of them and just saying, hey, I play the video game, is a good way to potentially see if your tournament organizer is actually willing to host for the video game. Because I have gotten confirmation, at least in my area, that there will be like a few in like the Indianapolis area that will actually host the video game. How many is still a bit unknown, and when that will get updated on the event locator, which I'll have in the description as well, is a little bit of an unknown as well, but hopefully it will be like shown soon, right? And yeah. And finally, like the last thing I wanted to talk about was the Oceania International Championships. They will actually be hosted in VGC Series 1, it seems. It seems. See here, we got the Melbourne, Friday, February 17th. And that will be the first like major international championships for the video game. And it should be a very high level and like very interesting competition to watch for sure. And yeah, we are actually closing in on like one of the bigger regional championships as well. And the first regional of Scarlet and Violet, with the San Diego Regional Championships happening on January 8th. As you can see here for the regional championship information, you can go here and you got January 6th to 8th, you got San Diego Regionals. And the last bit of registration is also closing up as well for that, as the registration has ultimately capped like a long time ago, but because some people had to drop out, there are spaces being opened up occasionally, and that is something to potentially look out for, which I believe I can actually pull up that now, where you can find those. Unfortunately, because of how like the VGC and how like Pokemon scene kind of works, a lot of these information you have to find through Twitter, which isn't really the most convenient thing in the world. But you go through like the Team Northwest Events Twitter, and you go through these like event organizer Twitters for like different regionals. You can find like some general information about these certain regional championships. Like here, you go to the Team Northwest Events Twitter, and you are actually able to see here at the San Diego registration update, they are going on sale at Thursday, December 22nd at 6 p.m. So effectively, because it's PST time, it will be PST time, so you know, because PST regional. So you can adjust for your time zone off that. But yeah, there are Scarlet and Violet, there are 7 spots left. It will go live on Thursday, December 22nd. So literally today, if you want to get a spot in, there's not many more spots left. You'll have to be like right on there. There are going to be a lot of people trying to sign up for this event, as it already has like way too many players, honestly. So yeah, if you want to look for that, you can sign up through there, and ultimately you will have to go through like their website and find the specific link to it and see through all this information here. And the regional will ultimately be January 7th in San Diego, California, of course. And if you're able to register, it will be a big way to help get your aspirations for the Pokemon World Championship going. And I do recommend, if you have the ability to literally just like get on the nose and just be right there for the registration, right? Because the registration is going to be like very fast, and I can't stress this enough. I was actually trying to register for it on last week before I realized some other stuff like came up, and it was a bit awkward for me to actually get registered. But ultimately I couldn't get in because they were too fast. They're simply too fast. So yeah, I do recommend that you are on a bit earlier than 6 p.m. PST, so you can make sure you can actually get the slot. I think that's like really the last thing I want to talk about in this video. This World Championship bar announced some very big differences, and we are still waiting for information on Premier Challenges and Mid-Season Showdowns. Though I will say Premier Challenges were 30 points for victory, and Mid-Season Showdowns were in fact 50 points for victory. So it's still like, if it's the same kind of system, then it should be that way. In general, Mid-Season Showdowns are essentially like monthlies for the video game. You can play any other circuits, so you can understand it there. And there's also like just finding events through like going to TCG stuff, checking out your locals, telling them, hey, maybe we can get some VGC stuff going, and like organizing in like Facebook groups in your area too for Pokemon is a good idea. Because Because a lot of like locals tend to be ran through Facebook, if I'm going to be honest. Which I'm personally not the biggest fan of, but you know, it's just how it is. It's how it is, guys. It's how it is. And yeah, that's really it overall. Yeah, thank you for watching. Later.